Transitioning from text-dependent analysis to text-dependent writing on South Carolina State Summative Assessments. Before we begin, you will need to access several resources. These resources are located in a Google folder. You may access the folder by using the QR code on the left side of your screen or by using the URL that is located beneath the QR code. In this folder, you will find a 3-4 handout with a template of the indicators assessed by the TDW item, a 5-6 handout with a template of the indicators assessed by the TDW item, a 7-8 handout with 2 templates of the indicators assessed by the TDW items, an English 2 handout with 2 templates of the indicators assessed by the TDW items, a frequently asked questions document, and a link to the TDW rubrics. Although we provided a link to the TDW rubrics in the Documents folder, we also want to show you where the TDW rubrics are located on our web page. We will add additional resources to this web page as they are made available. First, you will need to access the SCDE Assessment Quick Links page for teachers. On the screen, you will notice a QR code and the URL that will lead you to this page. Once you are at the Assessment Quick Links for Teachers page, you will scroll until you find either the SC Ready ELA Writing Component heading or the EOCEP for English 2 Writing Component heading. Click on the heading that best describes your testing program. When you open the Writing Component page, scroll past the TDA resources until you see New Text-Dependent Writing Rubrics. Here you are able to access the TDW writing rubrics and any other resources as they become available. Once the TDW item becomes operational, the TDA resources will be removed from this web page. Welcome to the Office of Assessment and Standards overview of the transition from text-dependent analysis to text-dependent writing on SC Ready ELA and the end-of-course exam for English 2. In this session, we will provide an overview of the transition from TDA to TDW to include why we are moving away from TDA and when we will field test the new TDW item and when the item will become operational, what TDW is and why it is replacing the TDA on summative assessment, what modes of writing will be assessed and in which grades, how the TDW item aligns to the written communication standards of the 2023 South Carolina College and Career Ready English Language Arts Standards, an overview of the TDW rubrics and where they are located for teachers to access. Lastly, we will explore additional resources that are available to teachers at this time and what resources teachers can expect from the Office of Assessment and Standards in the future. The shift from TDA to TDW. There are 3 main reasons why we are moving away from the TDA item and replacing it with the TDW item. After a careful examination of the new 2023 ELA South Carolina College and Career Ready Standards, we determined that the new ELA standards, especially in the lower grade levels, do not support the current TDA item. Currently, SC Ready students are assessed in all 3 modes of writing, narrative, informative, and argumentative, through multiple choice items on the writing session of the SC Ready assessment. English 2 students are assessed in informative and argumentative writing through the multiple choice items on the writing session of the end of course exam. Beginning in the 2024-25 school year, English 2 students will also be assessed in narrative writing on the writing session of the exam. The current TDA item is aligned to Writing Standard 2 at each grade level, 3 through 8, and English 2. The new text-dependent writing items are aligned to narrative writing in grades 3 and 4, argumentative writing in grades 5 and 6, and either informative writing or argumentative writing in grades 7, 8, and English 2. By assessing each mode of writing through an extended writing item, the TDW, students in South Carolina will have the opportunity to respond to an extended writing item in each mode of writing by the end of English 2. Over the past several years, teachers, content experts, and parents in South Carolina have expressed concerns about the TDA item. In addition to listening to those concerns, the Office of Assessment and Standards carefully tracked the TDA item data from year to year. Making a change from TDA to TDW allows us to be responsive to the concerns of our South Carolina educators and parents. The decision to move away from TDA and begin TDW was not taken lightly by the Office of Assessment and Standards. Our research began with what other states in the Southeast are using on their summative assessments. After researching several states that have moved or are moving away from TDA, we had conversations with many of them to find out why they changed and what challenges they faced. After conferring with other states and having additional internal conversations, we developed a plan for the TDW rubrics and items. South Carolina teachers and content experts played a vital role in the development of the new TDW assessment items. Committees worked with OAS to select and review passages and revise the TDW items that will be field tested in spring 2024. We also reached out to assessment experts, including the scoring directors at our testing vendor and our Technical Advisory Committee. Our Technical Advisory Committee, or TAC, is a group of assessment experts from all over the country. We presented TDW to TAC and received a lot of helpful advice. We then edited and revised accordingly. Lastly, we conducted cognitive labs. The labs took place in 3 South Carolina school districts and 2 schools within each district. As part of the lab, students of different backgrounds and achievement levels in grades 3, 7, and English 2 were presented with a TDW text and item. With prompting from an adult from their respective schools, the students talked through how they would respond to the item if they were writing it. The cognitive labs allowed us to ensure that the items are accessible to all students and also provided us with an opportunity to make any final edits or tweaks to the items or to the writer's checklists. In spring 2024, SC Ready ELA and the EOCEP for English 2 will assess the 2015 South Carolina College and Career Ready standards for the final time. This includes the TDA item. Also in spring 2024, districts will administer a standalone field test for the TDW item. This field test will contain only one TDW item. If you have questions about when the field test will take place in your district, contact your school testing coordinator or your district testing coordinator. In 2025, SC Ready ELA and the EOCEP for English 2 will assess the 2023 South Carolina College and Career Ready ELA standards, including the new TDW item. Defining text-dependent writing. Text-dependent writing, or TDW, is an untimed, passage-based extended written response item that will be assessed by one of the three modes of writing as described by the NAEP writing framework. NAEP is the National Assessment of Educational Progress that is also known as the nation's report card. This national assessment provides us with a window into the K-12 education system at a national level. There are three types of TDW items. Each item's title provides students with the purpose for writing: to convey an experience, real or imagined; to persuade through argument; to inform. If you notice in the left-hand column, the title of the type of writing provides students with the purpose for writing. For example, 3rd and 4th grade students will be writing in the narrative mode, but their purpose for writing will be to convey an experience, real or imagined. Students in 5th and 6th grades will be writing in the argumentative mode, but their purpose will be to persuade through argument. Students in grades 7 and 8 will be writing in either the argumentative mode or the informative mode, and their purpose will be either to persuade through argument or to inform. Students in English 2 will also be writing in either the argumentative mode or the informative mode, and their purpose, like grades 7 and 8, will either be to persuade through argument or to inform. As you can see in the table, each type of TDW item aligns with one mode of writing and includes elements of Written Communications Standard 4. As mentioned previously, the TDW grade bands are as follows. Students in grades 3 and 4 will respond to a text-based item asking them to convey an experience, real or imagined. Students in grades 5 and 6 will respond to a text-based item asking them to persuade through argument. Students in grades 7 and 8 and English 2 will respond to a text-based item asking them to inform or to persuade through argument. One of the chief concerns about TDA expressed by South Carolina educators was the use of a single rubric for grades 3 through 8. The TDW item has multiple rubrics. If you notice by the placement of the red circles, grades 3 and 4 will share a rubric, grades 5 and 6 will share a rubric, grades 7 and 8 will share 2 rubrics, and English 2 will have 2 rubrics. During the 2024 standalone field test, students in grades 7, 8, and English 2 may be presented with a TDW prompt that asks them to inform or to persuade through argument. In 2025, when the TDW item becomes operational, all students in grade 7 will write in one mode. All students in grade 8 will write in one mode, and all students in English 2 will write in one mode. The modes of writing for grades 7, 8, and English 2 will vary from year to year. OAS will not announce the assessed mode. The rotation of the modes is to provide students with a full range of writing assessment in grades 3 through 8 and English 2. Educators of all grade levels who are watching this recording will now need to access the corresponding handout listed at the beginning of this presentation. We will work through the paired indicators of SC Ready before looking at the assessed indicators for English 2. After we review the writing indicators, we will compare the skills of those indicators to the skills in the TDW rubrics. We recommend that as we work through the indicators, our audience make note of the academic vocabulary in their respective grade levels or course. Please notice that each indicator template handout is color-coded to match its corresponding assessment rubric. Grades 3 through 6 are purple, grades 7-8 are green, and English 2 is light orange. Looking at your handout with the template of the 3rd and 4th grade written communication grade level indicators, you will notice the indicator for the 3rd grade narrative writing, C 3.1, on the left. Underline or highlight the following academic language: real or imagined experiences, setting, narrator, characters, temporal words and phrases, plot structure, descriptions, and ending. Looking at the same handout, you will notice the indicator for the 4th grade narrative writing on the right. Underline or highlight the following academic language: real or imagined experiences, setting, narrator, characters, plot structure, dialogue, descriptive language, sensory details, transitions, events, sequence events, and ending. At the bottom of your handout for grades 3 and 4, you will notice the introductory statement to Communication Standards 4.1. In 3rd grade, highlight or underline, write and expand grammatically correct sentences and paragraphs. In 4th grade, highlight or underline, write and expand grammatically correct sentences and multi-paragraph compositions. Based on the language we just noted, the expectation of writing produced for the TDW item in grades 3 and 4 is that the response consists of paragraphs or a multi-paragraph composition. There is no set number of paragraphs attached to the TDW response for students in grades 3 and 4. This aligns with the instructional expectations set forth by the 2023 ELA writing indicators. We will now look at the written communication standards for grades 5 and 6. Notice that the 5th grade indicator for argumentative writing is in the top left corner of the template. As you look at your handout for the C 1.1 indicator for grade 5, circle or highlight the following academic language: arguments, claim, reasons, facts, credible source, organizational structure, transitions, concluding statement, or section. Remember, the ELA standards are written for instruction and not summative assessment. This means that sometimes how things look in instruction is not how they will look in assessment because we are limited in summative assessment. One example is the mention of credible sources in the C 1.1 indicator. In the classroom, students will be provided with resources from their teachers or will be guided by their teachers to research and locate credible sources. On SC Ready, the credible sources will be provided to students. As you look at the 6th grade argumentative writing indicator on the top right of the template, circle or highlight the following academic language: argument, claim, reasons, evidence, credible source, alternative perspective, organizational structure, purpose, task, transitions, concluding statement, or section. Look at the bottom of the handout and notice that the introductory statements for C.4.1 are included for both grades 5 and 6. Highlight or underline, write single and multi-paragraph, variety of sentence types, variety of sentence structures. Just as in grades 3 and 4, students in grades 5 and 6 are expected to write single and multi-paragraph compositions. The TDW item requires students to write multi-paragraph compositions, but does not attach a required number of paragraphs to the response. Still looking at the bottom of the handout, you will notice AOR 0.6.1. While the TDW item for grades 5 and 6 is aligned to argumentative writing, it is still tied to a text. Because of this, students must be able to paraphrase and summarize text within their own writing. While AOR 0.6.1 is not the primary indicator being targeted with TDW, the expectation of using this reading skill is embedded within the TDW rubric. Now we will look at the writing indicators for grades 7 and 8. Remember, there are two templates, one for argumentative writing and one for informative writing. We will begin with argumentative writing. Let's look at the 7-8 indicators for C.1.1 argumentative writing. As you look at the 7th grade indicator in the top left corner of the template, highlight or underline the following academic language: arguments, claim, reasons, evidence, credible source, acknowledge counterclaim, organizational structure, purpose, task, transitions, concluding statement, or section. As mentioned earlier, the TDW item will provide students with credible resources on the assessment. This may look different from instruction, where students will locate and evaluate their own resources for credibility. As you look at the 8th grade indicator, C1.1, located on the right side of the page, highlight or underline the following academic language: arguments, claim, reasoning or reasons, evidence, credible sources, acknowledge and refute counterclaim, organizational structure, transitions, tone, task, audience, concluding statement, or section. Let's look at the bottom of the handout. You will first notice the introductory statement to ELA C.4.1. These are the same for grades 7 and 8. Underline or highlight the following: write compositions with varied sentence structures. Instructionally, teachers determine the length of the written product based on the assignment and the purpose for writing. The TDW item does not require a set number of paragraphs for the TDW response. The only thing specified on TDW is the total number of characters, which is 5,000. As a reminder to teachers, requiring students only to write 5-paragraph compositions may hinder a student's performance on the TDW item because the text provided with the task may not be rich enough to support a 5-paragraph response. Still looking at the bottom of the handout, you will notice AOR 0.6.1. While the TDW item for grades 7 and 8 is aligned to argumentative writing, it is still tied to a text. Because of this, students must be able to paraphrase and summarize text within their own writing. While AOR 0.6.1 is not the primary indicator being targeted with TDW, the expectation of using this reading skill is embedded within both TDW rubrics for grades 7 and 8. We will now look at the informational writing indicators for grades 7 and 8. Look at the handout for C.2.1. Looking at 7th grade first, highlight or underline the following academic language: analyze, topic, organize ideas, structure, facts, definitions, details, quotes, transitions, precise language, thoughtful elaboration, tone, audience, task, concluding statement, or section. To that list, make a note of the term controlling idea. We will come back to this when we discuss the TDW informational rubric. Looking at 8th grade, highlight or underline the following academic language: analyze, topic, organize ideas, structure, facts, definitions, details, quotes, transitions, precise language, thoughtful elaboration, tone, audience, task, and concluding statement or section. To that list, make note of the term controlling idea. We will come back to this when we discuss the TDW informational rubric. The expectations for C.4.1 and AOR.6.1 are the same for both rubrics in grades 7 and 8. The indicator handout for English 2 is 2 pages, one for argumentative writing and one for informative writing. This handout and the corresponding rubrics are color-coded light orange. For those of you looking at the English 2 handouts, we will begin with C.1.1, argumentative writing. At the top of the handout, you will notice the C.1.1 indicator for English 2. Highlight or underline the following academic language: arguments, claims, reasoning, evidence, credible sources, acknowledge and refute, counterclaim, tone, style, purpose, audience, concluding statement or section. Now let's look at the top of the E2.C.2.1 handout for informative writing. Highlight or underline the following academic language: analysis, introduce a topic, develop a topic, organize, evidence, facts, definitions, details, quotes, examples, data, other information, audience, transitions, precise language, style, objective tone, task, purpose, concluding statement or section. Write the term controlling idea. We will discuss this when we look at the TDW rubrics. At the bottom of both English 2 TDW rubrics, you will notice the introductory phrase from English 2 C.4.1 and the indicator E2.AOR.6.1. Highlight or underline the following. In English 2 C.4.1, write compositions with varied sentence structure. Remember, there is no required number of paragraphs for the TDW response. Students are limited to 5,000 characters. As mentioned with grades 7 and 8, the text provided with the TDW item may not be rich enough to support a 5-paragraph response, so requiring all students to write a 5-paragraph response could hinder their scores. In English 2 AOR.6.1, make note of summarize and paraphrase. As mentioned in previous grades with SC Ready, the TDW item aligns with the writing standards. However, since TDW is text-based, students must be able to incorporate paraphrasing and summarizing of text into their responses. We will now look at the TDW rubrics alongside the corresponding indicators. Remember that your indicator template handouts are color-coded to your rubrics. 3.4 and 5.6 are purple, 7.8 is green, and English 2 is light orange. We will again go in order from grades 3.4 through English 2. The cover page of each SC Ready rubric contains information about holistic scoring and provides teachers with a score point, a level, and an overall descriptor of that level. This sample is from the grades 3.4 TDW rubric to convey an experience. Score point. The TDW item for SC Ready is worth 4 points. This will not be multiplied as it is for TDA. It will only be 4 points of the assessment. Levels. Each level of the SC Ready TDW scoring rubric uses the language of the SC Ready performance levels. These are exceeds expectations, meets expectations, approaches expectations, and does not meet expectations. Using the language of the SC Ready performance level descriptors creates a unified language for teachers. Descriptor. Each level has a one-sentence descriptor that is specific to each mode of writing. The descriptors shown in this slide are for the grades 3-4 rubric to convey an experience real or imagined. We have had several questions about the 3-4 TDW item and the role of text with the item. As you see highlighted in the descriptor, the expectation is that a student's response will be based on the text provided. A student should use the provided text for inspiration in his or her own writing. The skills, however, are those that come from the language of the grade level indicators and will include elements such as plot, character, narrator, sequencing of events, and transitions, to name a few. All SC Ready rubrics are 4-point holistic rubrics that are organized in 3 domains: structure, development, and language. The domains do not affect the holistic scoring and are included to better help teachers and students understand the components of a TDW response. All SC Ready rubrics are 4-point holistic rubrics that are organized in 3 domains: structure, development, and language. The domains do not affect the holistic scoring and are included to better help teachers and students understand the components of a TDW response. As you look at the SC Ready TDW rubrics for any grade band or any mode of writing, you will notice the use of descriptors such as skillfully and well crafted. These descriptors are in alignment with the descriptors used in the 2023 Performance Level Descriptors PLD document. The PLD document was created by committees of ELA teachers and content specialists. The purpose of the PLD is to identify for each indicator assessed on SC Ready the performance characteristics of exceeds, meets, approaches, and does not meet. The release date of the PLD document has not yet been determined. In relation to the TDW item and the scoring of student responses, we do not yet know what skillful writing looks like. After students take the TDW standalone field test in spring 2024, the SCDE will assemble committees of ELA teachers and content experts to serve on range-finding committees. These committees will read and analyze student responses to the TDW items and determine at each grade level what constitutes each score point. In other words, the teachers will determine what skillful writing looks like at each grade level and within the corresponding modes of writing. The responses scored by the range-finding committees will then be used by our testing vendor to train the scorers on the expectations of students writing at each score point. The expectations will be communicated to the rest of the ELA teachers in South Carolina when the SCDE releases scored and annotated student response samples. Refer to your indicator template handout for grades 3 and 4. As we highlight the words and phrases in the rubric, compare them to what you highlighted or underlined in the grade level indicators. Something we need to note again is that the rubric is written for summative assessment and the indicators are written for instruction. Because of that, there may be a few minor differences between the two. One instance is the use of transitional words and phrases instead of temporal, as used in the 3rd grade indicator. Temporal is a category of transitional. Transitional is introduced in narrative writing in grade 4. However, it is introduced in other modes of writing in grade 3. Because 3rd grade writers will be familiar with transitional words and phrases, we decided to use that phrase here instead of splitting the language between 2 grades. Sensory details is another phrase that we opted to use with both grades. Setting, narrator, characters, plot structure, transitional words, phrases, sequence events, ending. Details, descriptive, develop events, actions, thoughts, feelings. Dialogue for 4th grade only. Varied sentence types, tone and voice. Tone and voice are represented at the 4 score point on each TDW rubric. In the years of TDA range finding, we noticed that students who had a tremendous sense of voice in their writing, but who did not fully address the TDA response or did not include enough analysis, did not receive credit for the voice in their writing. The TDW rubrics address this concern by allowing voice to be considered at the 4 score point. Since this is a holistic rubric, students whose writing is structurally sound but may not have a powerful voice will not lose a score point. In other words, those students can still score in the 4 range. Remember, a holistic rubric looks at the overall quality of the writing and does not use the descriptors in the rubric as a checklist to award points. Holistic rubrics allow the scorers to determine what the students do well and does not require that the scorers take away points for weaknesses. Let's move to the TDW rubric for grades 5 and 6. Refer to your writing indicator handout for grades 5 and 6. As we highlight the words and phrases in the rubric, compare them to what you highlighted or underlined in the grade level indicators. Something we need to note is that the rubric is written for summative assessment and the indicators are written for instruction. Because of that, there may be a few minor differences between the two. Claim, organizational structure, transitional words and phrases, concluding statement or section, reasons, facts, evidence, data, summary, paraphrasing, text evidence. 6th grade only, alternative perspective. Varied sentence types. In the TDW item, the task is provided for all students. Purpose in the 6th grade is in the 6th grade indicator, but is not named in the rubric. This is because the purpose of the TDW response for grades 5 and 6 is provided to persuade through argument. Argument is the mode of writing. Persuade is the purpose for writing the argument. In grade 6 only, students are expected to acknowledge an alternative perspective. For the purpose of summative assessment, students are expected to mention how another person may view the topic. No reasons or supporting evidence is required. Voice and tone appear in all rubrics at the 4 score point. This score point is above the grade level indicator. A score of 3 is on grade level. Refer to your first handout for grades 7 and 8, standard C.2.1. As we highlight the words and phrases in the rubric, compare them to what you highlighted or underlined in the grade level indicators. Something we need to note is that the rubric is written for summative assessment and the indicators are written for instruction. Because of that, there may be a few minor differences between the two. Topic, organizational structure, varied transitions, introduction, concluding statement or section, facts, definitions, details, quotes, elaboration of thoughts, summary, paraphrasing, text evidence, varied sentence types and phrasing, tone, task, and audience. Elaboration of thoughts allows students to integrate their own thoughts or experience with the topic in addition to what they find in the text. Voice appears in the level 4 score point in every rubric. controlling idea is used only for the TDW to inform for grades 7-8 and English 2. The word thesis is not included in a language of the standards because we were concerned that using the term central idea or topic would create confusion with the student writers. We opted to use controlling idea for the TDW item. A controlling idea is the primary focus of the paper. Now let's look at the 7-8 rubric for C.1.1 argumentative writing. Refer to your first handout for grades 7-8, standard C.1.1 as we highlight the words and phrases in the rubric. Compare them to what you highlighted or underlined in the grade level indicators. Claim, organizational structure, transitional words and phrases. Claim, counterclaim, reasons, evidence, introduction, concluding statement or section, reasons, facts, evidence from the text, summary, paraphrasing, text evidence. 7th grade only, acknowledge a counterclaim. 8th grade only, acknowledge and refute a counterclaim. Evidence, varied sentence types and phrasing. 8th grade only, tone, task, audience. Elaboration of thoughts, which includes original student thinking, allows students to integrate their own thoughts or experience with the topic in addition to what they find in the text. In 7th grade only, the word counterclaim first appears. In the 2015 standards, it first appears in grade 8. For summative assessment purposes, students must acknowledge a view on the topic that is opposite of what the student writer claims. 8th grade only. For summative assessment, 8th graders must acknowledge an opposite view on the topic and give at least one reason or evidence supporting why that view is wrong. Also 8th grade. The focus on tone that is appropriate to the task. Task is provided by the TDW item, and audience is part of the 8th grade indicator. Voice and tone appear in all rubrics at the 4 score point level. We will now look at the TDW rubrics for English 2. You should notice on the cover page that there are 2 traits included in the TDW rubrics for English 2. The TDW rubrics for English 2 are different from SC Ready in 3 ways. The English 2 rubric has 2 traits that are used for the holistic score. We will take a closer look at these 2 traits on the next few slides. Although there are 2 traits, the rubric is still scored holistically for 1 total score. The total score point value of the TDW for English 2 is 6 points. The TDW point value will not be multiplied as it is with the TDA item. It will remain a 6-point item as indicated on the scoring rubric. The language of the performance levels for the end of course exam is different from SC Ready. We will look at that in just a moment. The domains do not affect the holistic scoring and are included to better help teachers and students understand the components of a TDW response. The domains for Trait 1 are structure, development, and coherence. On the cover pages of the 2 English 2 TDW rubrics, you will notice that Trait 1 for argumentative writing is different than Trait 1 for informative writing. Trait 1 of argumentative writing examines a student's ability to establish a claim, acknowledge and refute a counterclaim, support the claim with evidence from the text, and elaborate on the claim with reasons and evidence. Trait 1 of the informative writing rubric examines a student's ability to establish a controlling idea, support the idea with evidence from the text, and elaborate on the controlling idea with facts, definitions, details, and/or quotes. As previously mentioned with the SC Ready rubrics, the TDW rubrics were created for summative assessment. While they are aligned with the instructional standards, there are some differences because of the summative purpose of the rubric. One example is illustrated here. Students must have a controlling idea in their informational responses. This serves as the basis of their response. Because the standards writing team did not wish to include the term thesis statement in the standards, this created a challenge for summative assessment. For instruction, not using the word thesis gives teachers the instructional freedom to use different terminology. Summative assessment, however, needs a term for consistency, especially with scoring. We opted to use the term controlling idea instead of central idea because we were concerned that it would create confusion for the students and they would not know if central idea refers to the text included with the item or with their own writing. Trait 2 of both English 2 TDW scoring rubrics is the same and places more emphasis on the quality of the student's writing than the SC Ready rubrics. Placing more emphasis on the quality of student writing in English 2 was recommended by English 2 teachers who worked on the TDW items. Trait 2 examines a student's ability to demonstrate control of language usage, demonstrate control of conventions, and demonstrate control of mechanics. Let's look at the cover page of the English 2 rubrics. Both English 2 TDW rubrics have 2 traits and include an overview of the traits on the first page of the rubric. The sample here is from the cover page of the To Inform rubric. You will notice Trait 1 is worth 4 points of the holistic 6-point score. The level descriptors of each score point align with the language of the end of course exam performance levels, exceeds expectations, meets expectations, minimally meets expectations, and does not meet expectations. Each score point has an overarching descriptor. Noted in the descriptors is that a student's response must be based on the provided text. Let's now turn to page 2 and look at the TDW rubric for To Inform. The domains of structure, development, and coherence do not affect holistic scoring and are included to better help teachers and students understand the components of a TDW response. As you look at the English 2 TDW rubrics, you will notice the use of descriptors such as effectively and skillfully. These descriptors align with the descriptors used in the 2023 Performance Level Descriptors PLD document. The PLD document was created by a committee of ELA teachers and content specialists. The purpose of the PLD is to identify for each indicator assessed on the end of course exam for English 2 the performance characteristics of exceeds, meets, approaches, and does not meet. The release date of the PLD document has not yet been determined. As mentioned earlier with the SC Ready rubrics, we do not yet know what skillful writing looks like. After students take the TDW standalone field test in spring 2024, the SCDE will assemble committees of ELA teachers and content experts to serve on range finding committees. These committees will read and analyze student responses to the TDW items and determine at each grade level what constitutes each score point. In other words, the teachers will determine what skillful writing looks like at each grade level and within the corresponding modes of writing. The responses scored by the range finding committees will then be used by our testing vendor to train the scorers on the expectations of students writing at each score point. The expectations will be communicated to the rest of the ELA teachers in South Carolina when the SCDE releases scored and annotated student responses and samples. You will notice that voice appears in the 4 score point. And just a reminder, the task and purpose are provided to students. Returning to the Trait 1 rubric for To Inform, please compare the academic language in the rubric with the language we earlier identified in the E2 C.2.1 indicator. Topic, organizational structure, varied transitions, introduction, concluding statement or section, topic and information, facts, definitions, details, quotes, summary, paraphrasing, evidence, varied sentence types and phrasing, tone and style, task and purpose. Controlling idea is used only for the TDW To Inform item for grades 7, 8, and English 2. The word thesis is not included in the language of the standards because we were concerned that using the term central idea or topic would create confusion with the student writers. We opted to use controlling idea for the TDW item. A controlling idea is the primary focus of the response. Remember, the task and purpose are provided with the TDW item. Elaboration of ideas and original student thinking allows students to go beyond the task, and voice appears in the 4 score point. Let's look at Trait 1 for argumentative writing. As we review the English 2 rubric for To Persuade, please compare the academic language found within the rubric with the language we earlier identified in the C.1.1 indicator. Argument, claim, organizational structure, transitional words and phrases, claim, counterclaim, reasons, evidence, introduction, concluding statement or section, topic, reasons, facts, evidence from the text, summary, paraphrasing, evidence, acknowledge and refute a counterclaim, evidence, varied sentence types and phrasing, style, tone, purpose, and audience. As we mentioned earlier, students are able to elaborate on their ideas and use original thinking about the topic. Voice appears at the 4 score point. Looking at the Trait 2 rubric for both argumentative and informative writing, you will notice that Trait 2 focuses on language usage, conventions, and mechanics. Notice that for Trait 2, there is not an exceeds category. This is because with grammar, we either meet or do not meet. For example, we either place a period in the correct place or we do not. We can't place it in the correct place extra well. Notice in the meets score point that the expectation is consistency, not perfection. Students can still meet the expectations and have minor errors. Notice in the does not meet score point, the frequency of errors interferes with meaning. Let's review the important points of the transition from TDA to TDW. Because of the close ties between the writing indicators and the TDW rubrics, the TDW item should be a natural part of writing instruction and not an additional mode of writing. Our goal was to support teachers in their instruction of the standards and to prevent the TDW item from being in addition to classroom instruction. If teachers are teaching writing and using the academic language of the indicators, then they are preparing students for this assessment item. The prompt or task provides the students with the purpose for writing. The score of 3 on the rubrics aligns with the grade level expectations. The score 4 is above grade level. The word analysis is not used in the items. However, analysis is an embedded skill within the indicator and the item. Teaching the writing standards will address the skills in the rubrics. Both the TDA and TDW items report with the writing session of our assessments. What's changing? The name of the item. The prompts will be tailored to the task and not formulaic. Students will be assessed at least once in each mode of writing over grades 3-8 and English 2. Grade-specific modes and rubrics. Varied modes from year to year in grades 7-8 in English 2. 4-point rubric for SC Ready, and a 6-point rubric for the end of course exam. The rubrics will no longer be weighted as they are for TDA. This will be reflected in the new assessment blueprints that will be released in fall 2024. Response, not essay. Does not use the word analysis, but the skills are present. Grades 3-4, we will call it a prompt and not a question. Grades 5 through 8 in English 2, task and not question. The writer's checklist. Each writer's checklist is aligned to the language of the grade levels indicators. The checklist will now appear directly beneath the item. We will show a sample at the end of the presentation. What's staying the same? All students will be assessed. Passage-based items, possibility of paired passages, reading level of passages will be on grade level. Extended written response item. Standalone writing items will also be used to assess writing. It is not timed. The word count for online responses and the number of pages for written responses is the same. Accommodations will be available. We will update the Assessment Quick Links webpage as resources are made available. One resource that is available now is the online tools training for the TDW standalone field test. We highly recommend that all students have an opportunity to practice with the OTT before the field test. Please return to the Assessment Quick Links page. You may use the QR code on the right side of the page. Scroll until you see the Online Tools Training, OTT, and click the heading. The DRC assessment page will appear. At the bottom of the page, you will see options for the EOCEP Online Tools Training and the SC Ready Online Tools Training. For demonstration purposes, we will select SC Ready. Once you select SC Ready, you will see a menu of OTT options. Notice that ELA has two, one for the operational ELA OTT and one for the ELA TDW standalone field test. Choose ELA TDW. On the next screen, you will have the option to choose your grade band or grade level. Because grades 3 and 4 share the same writer's checklist and the other grades do not, grades 5 and 6, 7 and 8 are listed individually. I selected grade 6. Notice the passage on the left side. Students in grade 6 will no longer turn pages in the passages. They will now scroll through the passage like students do in English 2. This is also reflected in the operational OTT and will be on the operational SC Ready exam this year. Just above the passage, students are directed to read the passage and then respond to the TDW task. The directions on the right side of the screen provide students with insights and hints. These are not available on the operational assessment, only on the OTT. Pay attention to the first sentence. This item does not align to the grade level indicators. This item is only for practice using the functionality of the test. The sample items on the TDW OTTs have not been field tested. They were used during the cognitive labs at grades 3, 7, and English 2. This particular item was used with 7th grade students during the cognitive labs. The item appears after a reminder to read the passage. The writer's checklist aligns to the language of the grade level indicator and the writing task. For example, the writer's checklist uses alternative perspective. The 5th grade writer's checklist does not. Students are able to access the scoring guidelines rubric by selecting the reference tool at the top of the screen. If you have questions about the TDW item or about SC Ready or the end of course exam, please contact us. Before you email about TDW, be sure to refer to the FAQ document as many of your questions may be answered there. We will share additional resources as they are available. This is also addressed in the FAQ document.